Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another Up for Discussion Sunday podcast. Today we have a very special guest with us, and that's Max Infeld of Krown. So, why don't you say hello, Max?
Hey, everybody.
Yes, Max. Do you want to quickly, and joining us, of course, is our teammates Brian and Paul. So they are listening as well. Uh, but yeah, do you want to give us an introduction, brief introduction of what Krown is, how you got into it, and how you got into cryptocurrency in general?
Yeah, I'm my crypto story is pretty bizarre. It's not different. Well, it's pretty different than a lot of people who got in through like a friend or investing or something like that. So in 2007, I created my own currency. It's called viral monetary units. I made this whole
Okay.
it's basically like actual paper currency, where it was based on this gift giving economy I came up with, where if you get someone to accept it, then my bank mails them 3 times the value. So I had a whole system of like coffee, beer, and meal denominations. And essentially, so I got super into it. I was into some money art shows with that. So I came into crypto as an artist pretty early on, working on more social engagement or like community interaction type artworks. That was one of my favorite ones. So
So that the currency was actually artwork in essence.
yeah, it was definitely an
Oh,
art
wow.
project. But also some people say it was like political in nature or
Mhm.
kind of like, and that happened before the economic collapse. And everyone's like, how did you know how to like talk about this? And anyway, yeah, that's how I got into it. So I got involved in a bunch of other early cryptos and worked on some of these early Bitcoin forks where they would just do these like pump and dump schemes and yeah, I
Good
was
old days. Good old
yeah,
days.
for sure. So I've been working on crypto projects for a long time, and I haven't been very public about them. Tried making apps on Bitcoin before Ethereum. Tried making Ethereum apps. Completely failed at that as well. Yeah, we
Is
all
that
thought.
because of the model of Ethereum, which is something else?
Yeah, totally. Yeah, the
Okay, I
fees
see.
and we
Same
thought it was.
experience here.
Yeah, everyone had the same experience who's tried to build on Ethereum, and it's like so lots of failures, and then coming over to finding EOS, and that is and finding out like BitShares and Steam. Went through that whole thing like every other EOS fanatic. Yeah, it seemed like the right place to build and develop communities. And it stretches as far back as these art projects that were like engaging and interacting, getting communities to incentivize each other and reward each other. So it seems like a natural home for me to build on and support these communities. And so the way I got into Krown was I went to a lot of conferences, and at the Tulip conference, I met a couple incredible people. One of them was Dwayne Felipe, and he was telling me about a lot of businesses he has and how he wants to engage with different communities and giving them the customers some type of like incentive model where you could reward them for participation, give more equity in the company. It doesn't have to be equity per se. It could be like virtual equity. And I was just like, oh man, like I'm on the same page here. So we ended up going to a bunch of conferences together and ended up going on full time with CSX. And one of the first things we made.
CSX.
Yeah, CSX is a block producer on a bunch of EOS IO chains.
Okay.
And it's mostly been there just kind of like as a standby block producer. On some of the chains they get, we've gotten higher up there. But so we supported these different chains for a while, and then ended up developing Krown with a bunch of other people we met at conferences, and formed this board of custodians, which using them as advisors, we created this path forward on how to develop tools for communities, support communities, and figure out the path to incentivizing them to give them this equity-based token in some organization. And that's not necessarily exactly what Krown is, but it's the path going forward to make things like that.
Right. Yeah, tons of great info there. I think maybe we should break it down a little bit for the people who may. I'm sure like most of the audience are familiar what a DAC is, but just for context, do you want to break it down a little bit?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, it's one of those things we're in the weeds and this stuff, and especially with crypto, just get into this like super niche thing, and it's really hard to fully go into what a DAC is. We could probably talk about it for hours and hours, but essentially, there's this concept that's been around since Bitcoin, where you can have a bunch of keys And when you turn them at the same time, it can release funds.
Mhm.
And so a DAC is essentially, or a DAO, decentralized autonomous community, or decentralized autonomous organization, or sometimes they call them decentralized autonomous corporation, or there's a couple other terms people use. But essentially, a DAC allows you to reassign who those key holders are through voting. So
Mhm.
essentially, the token holders, whoever these tokens are distributed to, can vote in these board members, or we call them custodians
Mhm.
in our case, and they can essentially vote for who's allowed to distribute the money, who's building the company, who do you want to have your interest representing the company, making day-to-day decisions, and it doesn't have to be a company. It could be just a very small kind of granular activity, but essentially you're voting for who's running things. So I think that's the best way to describe a DAC or DAO. Like I said, we can get into it much more detailed if you want to.
Yeah, we could do that later, but a little bit later. But I think that's a pretty good intro. So I am familiar with the concept of DAC. I think most people are familiar with it through the Ethereum DAO, or maybe even that is still a little bit niche. But I think if you talk about voting for board directors in a corporation, most people will understand kind of what that deal is. So I see how many custodian does Crown have at the moment?
We currently have 11 custodians.
Hmm.
Yeah, and so we've I think we extended that at one point because we had actually we you can change the configurations if we all vote on it. So the cool thing about the DAC is that you can update the code and how the logic behaves too.
Hmm.
So at one point we allowed less custodians to sign on a multi-signature transaction. So it's easier to send funds to projects. In funds, I mean specifically the Krown token that doesn't have any value, but being able to send our fungible token to a project, for example, you can change. Do you want to make sure that everyone says yes to this, or do you want like half the people to be able to say yes to this, or half plus one? So it's really configurable, and the really powerful thing is updating that code. And when we're trying to debug it, it's a little bit harder because we all have to agree. There's this consensus mechanism, not just to send the tokens, but to be able to update the software that's running on the EOS mainnet blockchain.
Hmm. Very cool, very cool. I also see you have Luke as a custodian. Sorry, and Luke is kind of the OG, in this stack game. I see he's the mind behind EOS stack, and it's very cool that see him on the board for the Crown deck.
Yeah, Luke is so awesome. I had followed him on Steam for a long time and connected with him at all these conferences. And when we were conceiving Krown, we had a few different options, but EOS stack is definitely the furthest along. And I just really like how they airdropped on EOS friends and families and communities before the mainnet launch. So I'm like, wow, these guys have like so much foresight. They know the power of EOS. And so I wanted to make sure that, as we're building Krown, that, we were going to be using their technology. And so we were, I think Vigor might have beat us. There's a little bit of debate there, but I think we're the first mainnet DAC to launch using EOS DAC's code. And so part of that was we actually went down to Puerto Rico and persuaded Luke to help us out launch this. And so we met up with him in person and hung out for a couple of weeks, and it was a really crazy experience. And that's what happened on May 22nd. So that was the initial birth of Krown Launch. Is going down to Puerto Rico and getting this thing set up, and really incredible experience. Really, this was before the EOS DAC factory, so it wasn't just like running the script and you could just crank out a DAC. But yeah, incredible stuff.
Very cool, very cool. So I think Paul has a few questions. He's been following up on the project a lot more than I did. So Paul, maybe you want to jump in and ask
Yeah, sure.
Max some questions. Yeah.
Yeah, sure. So I have been looking into it, and it kind of looks like this first year for you guys has been kind of the groundwork, laying out, all the kind of infrastructural pieces you need in order to have, the community in place. Because it kind of, from how a DAC essentially works is like you need to have, your custodians, and then you need to have people who are involved in the community in order to, make these decisions actually have some meaning. So I had kind of a question, like, do you have an idea about what your kind of first like milestone in terms of a software application? Because I noticed you have a couple problems you're trying to solve. Is there like an initial one that you're like, yeah, this is where we want to, this is where we're going to put all of our time and energy into in terms of like solving this first problem, and this is kind of the software we're looking to build, or are you in the midst of building out and testing? I'm just kind of curious.
Oh yeah, I can definitely answer that. That's a great question. So yeah, we've mostly just been laying the groundwork. Early on, everyone's like, let's build all these incredible apps and do all these incredible things. And it's like, well, with what resources, guys? There's a lot of talk early on, like everyone brings things to the table. Like, we need to see this. We need, like everyone sees the possibility of where this could go. So this first year was just straight up building, on one side of it is building a community of friends, family, neighbors. I consider that the EOSIO community. Feel like we're cousins, like getting to come on a show in a weird way. So that's one aspect of what Krown is offering. And then the other segment is offering tools and resources to businesses. And that's not necessarily through Krown, but it would be utilizing the token. So there'd be vendors that build out applications, using the Krown token and offering those services to businesses. And that's where one of them is called wet.rip. And it's basically a scratcher ticket that goes into products that have like mass distribution. And essentially people can find these scratcher tickets or even serial numbers that are printed in the packaging. And with these numbers, they can put them into our app. And then from there, they can get some instant rewards that are convertible to Krown. And then they could also answer some other questions relating to their product experience. And so that was the first app that we got into, this idea of like, oh yeah, we can engage these consumers and give them part of this token that represents some activity in the product. And then you could start going to that concept of giving them more equity in that building the brand experience. And it's like kind of like that. There was a Dorito chips project where like the customers get to come up with names of the products or figure out different flavors. But do they really get a portion of the proceeds if their name is selected? And things like that. So that's kind of the direction we're thinking about with those type of apps. And yeah, so that one's going a little slower than anticipated, but there's nothing on the roadmap per se about what Krown's offering. There's no promises about what will be built or anything like that. It's just, we're really focused on getting these smaller community things to work. Mm-hmm. And that's really hard. I mean, just getting people to sign a work proposal is a pain in the butt. Like you see this on with EOStack as well. Getting that regular engagement with the community and figuring out what works first, because those are things we're going to want to share with these companies. So we want to make sure we get it right.
Right.
Yeah. Like the tip bot is huge for us on Telegram, like getting that integrated, getting Krown to that. We just had this big cross-chain token transfer opportunity with Boss has created. So now we can send our token to Wax to, there's just so much cool stuff, but it's, it's baby steps. And I think, it's hard to launch any of these apps unless we know this stuff works for us too.
I just want to say that it's almost like the community is the product in this sense. I think that's what, a DAC is, what you guys are building out. Like you build out a community, and that community is kind of the first product. And then with that your baseline, you could essentially branch out to other stuff.
Yeah, I love that. Community as a product is definitely something we've talked about. I think that's a good way to describe it.
Max kind of put in perspective where Krown is at the moment. It's his first birthday. Actually, I'm not even sure if we celebrated Discussions' first birthday. I don't think we did, which is Discussions just over a year old as well. So
yeah, we didn't.
So what's your birthday plan, Max, for Krown?
So we have 2 days worth of events planned. A lot of these Zoom calls, which we all know very well. This whole Corona thing. Oh man, am I supposed to say that? Shit. Sorry. Okay. Anyway,
you can say it.
I just realized that some people don't like that on their YouTube. So anyway, we can cut that part out.
No. It's all right. It's all good. We're not about that.
On the free speech here.
Yeah, for sure. So with the recent incidents of people having to stay at home, you see all these people getting on Zoom, and I'm like, oh man, we could totally capitalize off this and bring in some of these people that aren't necessarily in crypto. And that's where we get people to come into Telegram. We start just giving them Krown right off the bat, which is awesome. Right. With the tip bot, that's the best way to get someone a token. I feel like Discussions is really similar, where you're like,
Mhm.
sign up, here's your brain key, and then they jump into a thread, they can start getting tipped. Like it's very, very, like, we love that. So what we have planned for Krown's birthday is 2 days of these Zoom calls, and different conversations regarding how it started, where we're at, where it's going. So those are kind of like those 3 themes. We broke it up into a bunch of different segments, and you can find that at Krown Token, the full list. Everyone's posting Medium articles about what's going on there. We have a schedule, tons of awesome events. We're giving away a ton of tokens. So if you want some Krown tokens, come and get them, stop by. I'm like super obsessed with NFTs right now. So I'm helping make some NFTs for the community to give away. And yeah, so I've done some FTs, some fungible tokens, and then some NFTs, some super limited ones. And then there's also Krownlandia. It's a spinoff from Krown, and they're launching as well with their own NFTs as well. So I have some really cool stuff planned, and yeah, I hope you guys can make it.
Yeah, for sure. It sounds like
Very
Are
nice.
you guys working with PixieOS for any of these? Because again, you're artists. I'm sure you heard PixieOS. So I'm just
Yeah,
curious.
We haven't yet, but we did a huge airdrop on their community. So over this last year, we've been airdropping Krown. So if you held a lot of Pixio, you got a lot of Krown, because we really love that community. So all the major EOS communities that we saw, like these distinct communities forming, we gave Krown to. So like Boyd, for example,
Right.
Infiniverse, EOS is one of them, IQ. So yeah, so we went through and gave a bunch of tokens, and we hope to keep doing that, as part of our kind of like homage, or we did as a standard airdrop. We didn't do this air grab type situation. So if you have those tokens in your wallet, be sure to send a small fraction of one to another account to keep them, because we're going to reclaim all the RAM for all those tokens. Meaning, if you got our airdrop, you got the tokens in your wallet, you're going to have to execute, a small action to be able to retain those tokens.
Yeah, I think we had noticed they actually got quite a few as well. So we're gonna make sure we go and claim that.
Yeah, our foundation has. I was just checking it. We have a fair amount of Krown, so we gotta make sure we move some of those. And
I'll be on that.
nice. Yeah, I actually think there's a lot of interesting kind of crossover with what you all are doing and some of our end goals in terms of we're obviously about building community, but really more about building the tools so that communities can be built. Like that's really more our kind of our focus is less about how the communities are governed or managed, but more about like, here are a bunch of tools that will help with those sort of end goals. We have I think in that sense, there's a lot to be explored in terms of partnership and places where what you all are doing and what we're trying to do can kind of really play nicely together. So it's interesting to find out about your project a bit more. I also think that we kind of encounter this a lot actually with what we've been doing, is that there's a lot of room for collaboration across all these projects. Whereas I know there's a ton of competitive elements within crypto, because at the end of the day, it is very competition driven marketplace. But in these early stages with all this technology that's just kind of getting developed, there's so much more room probably for sort of teaming and finding little places where everyone can kind of work together to kind of a rising tide lifting all boats type concept. So it's really cool to get to talk to you about about what you're doing.
No, I definitely, I think, we're all building very, very similar things, and it just comes down to integrating what works in these different communities. I feel like all apps have this like community engagement component, but when you don't have someone that has actually built communities or worked in different communities, it's really hard to build those effectively, thinking about the community member first. And so it's really cool to see, like people building stuff where you don't have to care about resources, you don't have to care about RAM, CPU, net, and and EOS was the beginning of that in crypto, like these user-friendly names and introducing people into these ideas of like the brain key to back up your wallet and things like that. I want to touch on one of my favorite work proposals that created a community from Krown. And we had this huge event called DACathon. And DACathon, we wanted to support, like, and honor everyone that's helped out with DACs. And so we wanted to make an equitable event. So we want to eat our own dog food. Like, how do we make an event that's more equitable and more engaging than a traditional conference? So with a traditional conference, you show up, you spend a ton of money. I mean, have you guys ever been to Consensus? Or like, holy, like, it's insane. Like, you're spending like thousands of dollars getting there, thousands of dollars for a ticket. Like, it's insane. Or, just any conferences. And it's kind of like gambling. You don't know if you're going to make a connection. You don't know if you're going to get to connect with that speaker that you want to connect with, or, find someone that you want to work with, or whatever your motivation is. And so I'm like, well, what if we have an event where, all that we charge a small fee, and that goes into a fund, a pool that in which we launch a DAC, determine the point, the objectives, the method for launching it, and then we have a hackathon after that, and then give out prizes from the DAC. And so we had a 2-day event earlier in the year. It was incredible. I think the first day was like a 14-hour Zoom call, just figuring out what we wanted to do. Wow. I think around 100 people watched it. We had about 30-something paid participants, which is really awesome. And we created a token and a community called MetaDAC. And MetaDAC is an educational branch to teach people about DACs, show the path forward, and host more of these events. And so everyone got issued one token, and that's what was used to elect the custodians. And so we've been having weekly meetings about building this MetaDAC. We're not on mainnet yet. We have a testnet version of it, and then when the DAC factory is ready, we'll launch on EOS mainnet. But yeah, it's so cool that we could make that out of in this new model, this new paradigm, using this technology. We could build a community using blockchain, and I just love how nested this gets. So you have like EOS community chain, support EOS DAC, and then EOS DAC supports the tons of other DACs, and then those DACs are now launching their own DACs. It's really interesting to see how that comes out. But I just want to share that because it's same with what you're doing. You're helping create and helping support these communities with these more equitable tools as well. You have that like in-thread tipping and some really cool things like that where you can elevate that engagement.
Yeah. We're actually building out quite more tools. Tipping is kind of like the very beginning. Similar to Krown, we've been kind of laying down the groundwork the last year. But one of the things that I could share with you, and there are a lot of things that I can't share with you just yet, is that we're gonna have an ambassador program that's gonna encourage different users to kind of promote their project on Twitter and on Discussions and elsewhere. We're gonna probably launch a beta, some like internal beta, if you will, sometime this week. I think I brought it up. It's too bad that I don't think it's gonna be ready before the Crown birthday. I think it would be awesome to kind of have you guys test it out. But yeah, we have other things like airdrop tool that has been around. If you want to airdrop to a very small selective group of users, we have that available on Discussions, and you can use it today for Crown. So.
Oh man, that's so cool. How's that on resources? Is it? Do you have to spend a lot of RAM?
Yeah, you're gonna have to pay. You're gonna have to pay for that out of your own pocket.
Yeah, it was unbelievable to see how expensive it was to do an airdrop on EOS mainnet. Luckily, we got it.
Right?
Yeah, it was thousands because we started before the IDOS attack, and then we were dropping while that was going on. And then we need more CPU. I think we had to spend like with Rex we got over 100,000 EOS of CPU or something. It was insane. It was like this is like the worst time in blockchain history to do an airdrop, but we pulled it off. And Oh, go ahead.
I was just saying the nice thing. So what we've tried to do is build a way for obviously you have these broad moves where you want to airdrop to tons of people based on maybe some broader characteristics. But what we've gone with our airdrop tool is, and we don't have a great use case for it yet because there hasn't been enough activity within a community to say like, okay, this is how we want to do this. But you can airdrop to a much narrower band of people and kind of instead of individually tipping all these people, it's like, hey, I can drop to a big group of people, and it's an extremely low effort move. I mean, I don't know. Jack has been kind of mostly the one interacting with it, so I don't know. He can probably say better than me, but I do think it's kind of an interesting way of just being like managing the communities that are starting to form around a topic or around a project. So it's definitely an interesting little piece.
One of the things that I really wanted to build on top of that actually is to kind of have the ability to drop to everyone who's commented on the thread, or kind of drop to everyone that's subscribed to a certain tag. Like, so the tags on discussions are like subreddits. So let's say, for example, if people are subscribing to the Krown tag, everyone in that tag could get an airdrop. So it'd be like a community-wide airdrop, and I think that'd be really cool.
Yeah, I love that idea so much. That's something that I was thinking about in our group. We had a ton of bots join our Telegram, so I'm like, I don't know how many active people.
Yeah.
Maybe 2/3 of them are real, or maybe 2/3 of them are robots. I don't know. But yeah, that was something that I was like, how do we drop to every single person? I could write like a script or something to do it manually, but it's just such a pain. Like, I'm like, I don't want to spend time doing that. But I was thinking also for great uses like a commemorative NFT, or even a limited fungible token. Like, first year active participants get a magic key, right? And then as they hold that key over in consecutive years, they'll receive additional tokens, additional maybe they get a special pass to a conference, maybe they get actual like a cool hat or a cool shirt or something once a year by holding this thing. And I think there's so much there in what you built with that, and I can't wait to try that out. We're gonna maybe this week we'll try a campaign and try to get some of our community members to come over and incentivize them. But yeah, I love that where you can airdrop on the whole community. That's so cool, and the idea that you have with dropping them on specific tags is really awesome as well.
Yeah. I actually want to get into so if the crowd community if you want to bring over the crowd community and use our application, just my ideas, because again, we're building this out for communities like yours, so getting feedback from you guys would be invaluable. I also want to talk a little bit about kind of the news story that broke this week, where Reddit just introduced their own tokens, and they're launching it on an Ethereum test network. So we're looking at it very closely and how they're doing that model. We actually have quite a similar idea in mind, where we'll allow users to purchase NFTs that show up, a special NFT that you can only purchase with the token. So let's say there's a special NFT, a Krown NFT that you could purchase and have it display on your discussions tag, your discussions username right next to it. So they're doing something similar. I don't know. I want to get you guys' opinion on it. What do you guys think about this Reddit cryptocurrency? It's called Moon, by the way.
Yeah, I mean, I think it was inevitable that Reddit would do something like this, and I think they're going to find that Ethereum is not the platform to try to do the kind of microtransactions that they're going to need. So we'll see what actually happens, but I can't imagine that this was anything more than like someone with influence being like, hey, we should do it on Ethereum. But at the end of the day, like it's a bit awkward to say the least in terms of the like imagine all of Reddit on Moon. Like would that even be functional? I doubt one subreddit would even work that well right now. A high demand for gas. So so I don't know. We'll see. I think the model is interesting. I mean, it's clearly very similar to some of the stuff we're talking about, but we're in a mode where like we have this concept that is really about a reputation system, which Moon kind of plays that role because it's based on upvotes and all that. But they're trying to take it to the point of like, hey, you could trade your Moon for other things in other markets, and we're talking really more about a reputation system using a non-tradable token, really more as a placeholder or with limited value that only lives inside applications that are utilizing the system. So I'm curious how that will work out. I imagine there'll be a ton of farming going on, just like what happens generally with like Steam, and that just seems to be an inevitability to me. But I'll definitely be watching it. And I was claimed my Moon. So
Do you know anything about this, Max? Have you? been
I've,
following this?
yeah, I've been following it. I definitely, I'm not really too much into Reddit. Sometimes I lurk around and read stuff on there. So,
Yeah.
I think the first thing I thought of was the saying that like, what's going to be the Ethereum killer? And the answer is you don't have to worry about that. Ethereum is the Ethereum killer. So it's like I think that's so
That was
funny.
pretty, yeah, they have a pretty good track record too. With the
Yeah,
Kitty, Baker DAO, you know.
and like just all the DeFi things. And I'm like,
Yeah.
why? So first of all, I'm like, I'm not, too hopeful on it. I think there is something to be said about creating those, a tool that they have to be able to create tokens for these different communities. But the question is, can communities accept these tools? And I don't think so. I think some of them can, maybe, but I think it's, that's where the marketer can really mess up, is like, oh, let's give all these tools to all these communities. And I almost want to say like they should be earning them. It should be like a game where they like get more features over time. Like,
Mm.
oh yeah, like everyone gets one token until you do these things, and then eventually you can get more access to NFT creation things or something. You know what I'm saying? Like a slow process where you engage with audiences.
Right.
I think they're kind of the hierarchy of the company kind of dictates what they can offer to the community.
Right.
So I think it can be very limited. I really think a way to just take over the market is make a way to import an entire subgroup and then like airdrop with like their EOS token onto their community, or like, oh
That's
yeah,
not
like
a bad idea.
you're the moderator, import your community. Now you're going to be using Discussions. No, I think there's
Great strategy. We might take that.
there's some really interesting opportunities there, but I'm not too hopeful with it.
Yeah.
They've had kind of like a coin, and what happened with that? I mean, I don't even know that.
Nothing.
Yeah,
I-
it's like,
I'm
Yeah,
not
that-
Reddit user. I don't think anybody. I think only the employees buy it, and then the secret kind of distributed to other users. Just as the way to kind of get that going. But I don't think
Yeah.
most people use it.
Yeah, I don't think it's a win. I think they would have continued using that if they could have, but yeah. Ultimately, I think they wanted to go with this cryptocurrency element because it has a lot more potential for being interesting and getting buzz and all that. And I mean, ultimately, I'm glad to see this happen, right? Like, I'm glad to see Reddit do this. I think Reddit's fundamentally a little bit or incompatible with cryptocurrency just based on how it operates. It's obviously
Because it's centralized.
what's that?
Because it's centralized.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and I think the way that the community forms becomes like it's very arbitrary. It's like, well, I created this topic and now I'm the moderator, and I have no business being the moderator of a community, but I control it, and you can't like the process of getting rid of a moderator is extremely hard. I mean, if you look at the EOS subreddit, I mean, it's a nightmare because they don't have the main moderator is MIA. Like they don't have full moderation control, and so it's like the worst of all worlds. Like Discussions obviously has a very different philosophy on moderation and keeping that firmly in the grasp of the consumer. Like the user gets to choose what their moderation looks like. Reddit has a opposite approach where a moderator is just there and you kind of you buy into it. If you want to be part of that community, you accept that moderation. Well, when the community is there and builds up around a topic because it's the name of the token and the moderator is MIA, like you don't have anything really. You don't have the ultimate control over the community, and you can't make major changes to things. You can only make the minor ones. So, I think that fundamentally is going to be kind of a problem with trying to build real like the type of community that really is compatible with cryptocurrency, which so we'll see. And I think, I mean, as I said, we just onboarded a bunch of people to cryptocurrency who wouldn't normally have been there with the add of the Fortnite people. Although I guess technically, if you play Fortnite, you're kind of used to a form of digital currency in terms of whatever the Fortnite dollars are. But maybe this gets people into Ethereum or
So Max, I kind of want to direct that question to you. Obviously, Krown is a DAC. I think Paul's right. He hit up some points that I think is 100% correct because again, being a decentralized community, having that centralized moderating system doesn't make sense to me. So what the discussions we have a way for users to select their moderators. So in the context of a DAC, we're not talking about like which system is superior. I just want to kind of get your opinion on what system would make sense for kind of guiding the community discussion. What kind of moderation do you think it makes more sense for DAC?
I think I got a good answer to this question. And that's a really important question for engaging with these traditional style applications. Like who, basically it's like who should have authority, right? And I really think the DAC model of election can help with that. So one of the work proposals that we had is someone's building a tool which is for Telegram that allows custodians to be in a certain Telegram group and then boots out other people. So it's conditional. If you're an elected custodian by the token holders, in the same way that the keys change for who's allowed to transfer the token, those people are allowed to be operating in that group. So they can read the post, they can comment, they can reply. But if you're not on the list of people that are elected, you're not in the group. And I know that there's something like that EOS DAC has done for Discord as well. So I think something like that where you can set a smart contract dynamic permissions to allow certain participants to be moderators. So it's like, oh yeah, like we trust all the this group of people, they're the voter being token holders. These are the people that should be the moderators. And then I would say even have some additional pay or an extra incentive to be a moderator. And then, if there's always bad actors, but that's why you have a voting system. You can vote out the custodian. If, someone ends up having like severe mental health issues and they, just go off on some political stuff or block certain political stuff, the community doesn't want that, then we can, vote them out as a group. And I think that's what's really cool, that we can create systems in which you opt into that rather than having the surprise. Like, wait a second, like Reddit just like closed my account because I was talking about something controversial. Like I have some friends that get, have been blacklisted from there. And that's their entire life history for the last like decade is like on Reddit. And like, so I think a system in which we see the, the moderators are the custodians or something like that. It could be made just for that if it needs to be, but I don't think it needs to be. I think the DAC can automatically add those people. And then the people that are elected have permission to modify post or edit post or whatever, hide post if they want on the front end.
Yeah. So I just want to, you mentioned, I think it's pretty interesting. So someone's actually designing a script to kind of rotate the Telegram admins essentially based on who's the custodian of the DAC. Is that correct?
Yes.
Oh, very cool. Very interesting. I think that makes a lot of sense. Yeah.
Jack, that got me thinking about while we don't have any mandatory moderation. Like obviously users can opt out of whatever moderation exists.
Yeah.
The concept of like a default moderation based on who are the actual custodians would be pretty interesting. So
yeah, I was thinking about the same. Like we could kind of have a system where
it could be like 11 NFTs, right? And whoever has those NFTs become the default moderators. And then
we should have a contract that moderates who is the custodian at the moment and just modify the moderators based on that. And then,
there's also just to add real quick on that, there's a non-transferable token, a NFT, anyway, there's a non-transferable token. It allows you to send it to someone as an award or prize or reputation or something like that. But yeah, so with Krown and EOS DAC, the same, we're using the same system. It's just one account has the keys updated. So if you can give permission to one account, then you can inherit all the keys from all those users, to be moderators. So I don't think it's too difficult. I don't even think it's programmatically that intense to set that one account as the moderator, essentially, if you wanted to have a DAC control in that same type of moderation way.
Yeah, I think for us, if projects had a system like that, it would be really a lot easier because we would set that up and those would become the defaults. Obviously, as we said, like nothing on Discussions is meant to be, taking ultimately the user's ability away. So if they want to have an unmoderated view of Discussions, they're welcome to it. But from a usability standpoint, having trusted moderators and having people that like the community values is like going to be a more user friendly experience. So, having a system like that in place would be really, I think, very helpful, particularly with, even if it's not a straight up DAC, it could be helpful for projects that just say, look, these are the people we've brought on board. Here's a really easy way of making sure they're the default moderator. So it could just help from like an internal standpoint, thinking about this kind of stuff. So, yeah, that's cool. I think that idea is a pretty solid one that we could look into.
Working on giving us all the idea and strategy today.
Yeah,
onboard him as a consultant.
Well, I think it's important that we figure out ways to help, the community building on these not, it's one thing to say, hey, Boyd, what do you want? Like, right now, or hey, metal packaging token, what do you want? Like, what are the kind of things you need? But when you start having like a very loosely organized, community-driven thing, it's like, yeah, we can talk to Max and be like, you're a custodian, so you can speak. But at the same time, what about a year from now when the makeup of the custodians may be totally different? Like all these things, you want to have the infrastructure in place to be able to communicate with this kind of more fluid environment. So, I think it's cool to be able to get your insight on like what, how you see things operating and challenges, right, of how you do things transparently and where it is equitable and everyone can accept it because it's based on the terms that you laid out as a part of being part of the community. So that's pretty cool, I think.
And I think you hit on something really important, is the idea of like, can a community accept this? Can an individual accept this? And that's something we learned about a lot. Like over this last year, how many people have onboarded on EOS? I don't know, maybe like 500 or something, like 1,000. I lost track. I have no idea. But a lot of people just cannot accept it. Like they will not accept it. They have no desire to ever use crypto. I found there's people that have they don't care about DAX. They don't care about NFTs. They don't care about so I think that's important too, is like, we're like, what we're making is for like certain niche groups, and not all of them can accept everything. Some of them can take some of those pieces and use them once in a while. Some people will be like obsessed and use them every day. And I think it's like interfacing to, the desires and needs of those different individuals is what, has to be discovered. Like I got tired of giving people EOS wallets, and I'm like, okay, we're only going to give Krown through like pop into this group. And then some people are like, whoa, that's kind of cool. But then they never chat in there again. You know what I'm saying? So so even then it's like, I found an easier way of doing it. I still didn't speak to their greater need of like, day-to-day use. How can they engage? How can they participate? So I think offering those incentives and rewards in different communities is a huge aspect of this. And finding not just moderators, but these leaders and these people that, want to engage a community. We have people in the Krown Telegram. We have this guy, Explorer, and he's doing quizzes every day. He's compiling videos. He's compiling images. Like it's a job to him. And he's gotten a few work proposals from just recent. I'm like, dude, you're doing this for fun. Like, what are you doing? Let me give you a work proposal for this. So he gave him 1 million tokens. They're like, here you go, man. And then he gives away a ton of them. Once again, then people get excited and see what's going on. So I think that engagement is a really important step in bridging these gaps between those non-crypto people and the crypto communities that we're building.
Yeah, I think that's definitely a major point. It's probably that solving that kind of is going to be critical for the industry in general. Figuring out those solutions, and they'll be, as you said, they're not one size fit all. They're definitely going to vary on the individual and different types of communities, different technical capabilities, and what kind of demands are being placed on an individual community. So it's cool to talk about this kind of challenge, because I think it's at the heart of most projects that are kind of in the early stages and are not doing something that is just sort of A to B. It's more multi-step and kind of broadly about building community. So, which is not as easy as saying, here's my game and I tokenized it. That's different. That's obviously community builds up around the gameplay. So yeah, I'm really, these are the kind of conversations I think that need to happen. So it's definitely fortuitous, I think, that we connected.
Yeah, just really quick, one more thing on that that I noticed is it's really difficult for not just people to accept what's being offered, but like when you give them so much free range, they don't know how to participate in that. Like most people don't. There's some people that are like, whoa, like you mean I can come up with any idea that supports this community and I can get paid for that? So I think we're so conditioned to work in a particular way. In this particular subjugation I'm talking about, I don't want to get too much into that, but there's a way where like people are so used to working in a specific pattern. Like I'll do what you say and then I get paid a little bit. And then in this new paradigm, you just work on whatever you want, and if it provides value, there's funding for that in most stacks if they're active. And I'm like blown away by this idea, and we've seen it over and over and over. I have I think we translated the community newsletter that is a work proposal, probably like 10 languages, and that's like ongoing work. And you're like, this is incredible. And people are using that token to benefit their well-being, and it's just incredible to see that. But yeah, so anyway, a little kind of went on a little tangent with philosophy there.
That was great. I love that part. I think you couldn't have wrapped up the podcast better for us.
Nice.
Yeah, I mean, no, I'm being serious because the whole idea, that concept is still pretty new to people. It is the next generation, I think, of organization, of how people organize among themselves without needing to apply to government regulations. And it's the power back to the people, right? We're writing the rules again. We are writing the rules of the community again, and we're interacting in ways that are beneficial for everybody involved. So I
think
probably
Max
put that
brought
less
up
elegant than Max. So again, I just want to thank you so much for coming on, Max. It was a pleasure speaking with you and learning everything about Krown and about the deck.
Hey, Jack, thanks so much for inviting me on. I had a great time. Looking forward to talking more with you guys. And yeah, we'll get some Krown folks to come on over to Discussions and hang out. So yeah, definitely come by on the 22nd and 23rd. Lots of fun stuff planned. Tons of tokens. And yeah, definitely drop your Wax ID in the Krown Telegram group. It's at Krown Token, and I will hook you up with some FTs, some fungible tokens I made on Wax. But yeah, thanks again. Thanks for letting me join in. This is a blast, and looking forward to seeing more progress on Discussions as well.
Yeah, thanks, man. Really
Thanks very much.
cool. Really nice talking to you.
Awesome. Thanks, guys. I'll see you online. Bye.
All right. Take care.
Good job. And I will catch you guys that are listening to the very end next week. Thank you for listening.